this is Governor Bobber. Like, good day, doctors.
George Allen here. Good day, doctors.
Ask my family doctor just what I had. I said, doctor, doctor, Mr. MD, doctor. Now can you tell me what's ailing me, doctor?
Good Friday evening, everyone. You are watching Dr. Paulson, the Political Architect Show. We are live. Dr. Jeff is having some technical difficulties, but he will be on shortly. Busy week, a lot of stuff happening this week. It's crazy stuff, you know. Yeah, we got our first female African-American justice on the Supreme Court. And here is Dr. Jeff, you know. President Bush would have had the honor of having the first African-American, but the Democrats sandbagged when it was a Republican that wanted to put a African-American on the courts because they didn't want a Republican to get that honor. You know, we've had that and a bunch of other stuff, you know.
All right, so you want to start there then with the Supreme Court, Dwight?
Yeah, let's start there.
All right, so Ketanji Brown Jackson has been confirmed. She will not, be sworn in until Breyer retires, which will be when the term expires. They'll be done, by the end of June. So over the summer, we will see her sworn in, and then she will become part of the court, and they will start up the first Monday in October, as is traditional.
Very funny movie with Tom Bosley, by the way, first Monday in October.
There's always something with you.
Howie Cunningham from Happy Days.
One of the things that got me, so I was at the gym this morning, and they have CNN on the screen, and so they're covering the confirmation and everything like this, and the Chiron comes up, and it says like only 3 Republicans voted for her, and I'm like, okay, well, so I went back when I got home, and I went back and I just thought, well, let me look up what the vote was for Amy Coney Barrett. 0 Democrats, right? 0 Democrats voted for her. It's like, so what's the issue here? CNN. You're trying to shame the Republicans because only 3 voted for her, whereas none.
Only 0 voted
for Amy Coney Barrett, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So
only 0 voted for her
out there.
It's really sad the way they do things over there. Frankly, it's it's basically very bad, very poorly. The way that, and Brett, staying on the House, CNN, it's like it is just. I mean, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but he was challenged at the University of Chicago, Brian Stelter.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of things going on. I mean, the thing, and that was an interesting thing in and of itself. But here you have. I'm not going to sit here and disparage, our new Supreme Court justice. I mean, this was pretty much a done deal from the get-go. The Democrats pretty much control the Senate, so the committee was deadlocked 11-11, but they can move it to a floor vote and they can get it that way. We had the usual suspects, Collins, Murkowski, Romney, going to vote for the Democrat. But at least, so it comes off as a bipartisan vote as a result of that. That's fine. I mean, I don't, there wasn't any way we were going to stop this, from happening. But here you have because she's black, it's as if there's got to be kid glove treatment, right, Dwight? I mean, you cannot actually go and examine her record. You cannot criticize her for anything that she's done on the bench to date because she is black. And so that's why you have Joe Biden, you have all these Democrats complaining about the Republicans, reviewing her record and criticizing her for this, which is once again that selective, amnesia kind of a thing like that. Exactly what did they do to Justice Kavanaugh? What did they do to Justice Barrett during her hearings? I mean, there were no such restrictions on them in terms of examining the record, And there were a lot of lies that went on from those liberal Democrats during those hearings. But no, because this is, it's as if, they were really coming in there. This was going to be a race card play for the Democrats.
But in all fairness, in all fairness, being a little sarcastic here, but remember all the kid glove treatment that Clarence Thomas got when he was nominated as an African American to succeed Thurgood Marshall's seat on the Supreme Court. I mean, oh wait, no, they didn't. They basically ruined him, dragged his reputation through the mud, played gotcha politics. Yeah. Honestly, it's we're just good people on the Republican side. We don't do stuff like that, but I think it's really obnoxious.
Yeah, and Dwight, you're right in general, because this is kind of a pet peeve of mine with Republicans, is that there is something about these elected officials, in the Congress and in Senate, where they're kind of like, okay, look. We're going to try, for the most part, to try to play by the rules, right? And we are going to have some decorum and whatnot. We are going to try to treat these individuals as they should be treated, where they make this assumption that the Democrats will actually treat our people fairly when when conservatives get nominated for positions like this. But history has shown, we've been going through this for decades.
We've seen this movie over.
Republicans would just wake up and say, "Okay, look, we've tried. I mean, they've made some effort. We've tried to be, fair and above board in most cases, and tried, with these hearings of whether or not, judges, all kinds of things, thinking that you would actually treat our people the same way. But if the last 30 plus years hasn't taught the Republicans anything, then they're stupid."
Yeah, I mean, they've got no class. I mean, let me bring Jeff in. Jeff, you remember the fair treatment Clarence Thomas got? We were in high school when that happened. Well, it was my senior year. No, was it? Yeah,
well,
1989, yeah.
Yeah, I think the politics today were a little bit different back then. But, to your guys' point, as far as, nominating Supreme Court justices, that's got to be, in general, one of the most contentious types of nominations that are out there, because, the lifetime nomination, because they have so much influence on constitutional matters, and especially when you're looking to, revisit issues like, the education, abortion, these kind of things. I mean, these are issues that really matter to a lot of individuals. And when you have the potential to change how on closely divided issues, how it swings on one side or the other. I mean, of course, people are going to fight tooth and nail about this. So I think that it's natural to see a lot of partisanship in this. As far as, playing below, hitting below the belt, the kind of stuff that I hate is when, you basically try to pull your power base and use just the power of your, the Senate and the House to push through things that really shouldn't be pushed through. So that's, and I think it really happens on both sides. But that being said, I think that it's one of those things that it's unfortunate that it occurs to such a degree. It happened on both watches, but certainly, Dwight, to your point about the kid gloves, I mean, I think that there should be hard questions asked, because judges should be elected based upon their track record. That should be allowed to be questioned and about how they typically vote. I mean, those are the kind of questions that were asked to Amy and to other Kavanaugh. I mean, these were people that were asked these tough questions about their prior voting history, and I don't know. I mean, the Kavanaugh thing was kind of, I saw parts of it, and it was almost embarrassing at parts, because the way I didn't think he necessarily was the best justice. I mean, he definitely was, I think, a good justice, but the way he presented himself too, there were a lot of questions. So, I mean, again, I'm not trying to disparage him at all. I think he's shown himself to be a good justice, I think, in the cases he's presided over. So I have no complaints about him, but his nomination definitely was a bit of a circus show, in my opinion. But that's just
I mean, remember John Roberts. They fought him tooth and nail. He's actually taking the role of Kennedy on the Supreme Court. Chief Justice Roberts. I think it's really bad the way they're treating. We've got two sets of rules. When a Republican nominates a judge, they're controversial. They are, they go back to their days in kindergarten playing in the sandbox. That's how. I mean, honestly, God, this woman's a public defender. Her views on letting predators walk and stuff like that. I mean, that's a little bit. Nobody really. And the Democrats just don't care. Frankly,
They apparently don't care about what the definition of a woman is either.
Yeah, they don't. No, they don't. And I mean, how is it you're a functioning human with a functioning brain not know how to answer that damn question? It's not a hard question to answer. Most people.
Is that a thing though, where it's kind of a you can see this as a precursor for things that are going to be on gay rights or the transgender thing. We have that whole transgender in sports going on, things like this, and by not answering that question by saying that I don't know, I'm by trying to slough that off. Is that is she basically setting that up to say like I'm going to be friendly to the LGBTQIA plus crowd.
Mm-hmm. And Disney, I tell you, it's kind of pivoting a little bit, but Disney, takes aid and comfort as a result of this sort of stuff. They got, I just was floored by Disney's, latest shenanigans, so to speak, with the whole, and I hate to say it, our governor should have just kept his mouth shut, frankly, but he can't help himself, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, I still, the problem, that has come up is just because, Florida's, DeSantis signed this law, but the law, is really a preventative measure. That's all it really is. It doesn't affect anything that's going on today, but it has been twisted and distorted by the left, by the gay activists. It's like, this is a don't say gay bill. Well,
and what I'm
happening now. It's just a concern that it may come up in the future, and that parents should have some control over this, because nobody talks about what what I experienced when Pete LaBarbera was around at AIA, was when we
I remember those days.
He was following the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, and they had a film. They produced a film that they would show to elementary school kids about being gay is okay. Okay. I mean, in what universe is that for these little kids? Is that a proper thing to do? It's kind of like, I think was it Joe Rogan and others complaining about the schools, talking about trying to teach 9-year-olds about anti-racism. How many 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds are even thinking about racism, or if it wasn't for some liberal indoctrination by their parents or their teachers, aren't the kids trying to be kids for the most part? This whole culture. Exactly. I'm glad that my kids are grown. And I hope and I pray as my daughter raises her kids, and hopefully the others have their own kids at some point in time, that they will take a role and they will watch over the school systems to make sure that their kids don't get, all this indoctrination that is coming out of the education establishment. But the liberals, the teachers unions, they're like, oh no, you can't do that. It's like, we have this curriculum because it's the best, it's the best thing since sliced bread. We have to teach the kids what all this.
Yeah, and here's the thing. First, I want to say the folks who don't like Ron DeSantis or his policies are afraid that they're going to be ostracized for being gay or different or whatever. Well, there's 49 other states you can move to. There's no wall keeping you inside the great state of Florida. They can move. And Disney, frankly, they're going to pay a price for this. I tell you, Disney, I'm willing to bet their
so let me just say real quick too that, I mean, I understand, this is again one of those touchy subjects, because there's always going to be within school systems and within kids, you want to be kids, and most kids are okay, but there's always going to be bullying. There's always going to be find the kid who's different and pick on him. So that's always going to exist in any school. And I think it's up to the school to teach the kids to be kind to each other, and accept people for their differences as much as it's reasonable to do so. Because I think that's in general that's a good life practice. I mean, we don't want to just judge people based on their appearance. We want to, in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, judge them on the content of the character, not on their color of the skin or how they look. But again, that's a mature kind of outlook, and it takes training, and people are not born with that. So I understand schools wanting to encourage kids to accept others, but it becomes a problem when that becomes an agenda rather than a like a service to try to educate people in a sense that people are people, and everyone deserves respect, and just kind of leave it at that, and that without teaching special inclusivity or other types of policies which highlight certain differences. I think that people should be taught that based upon you shouldn't be judged based upon your how you look, how you act, your sexual disposition, those kind of things, and just kind of leave it at that, and don't necessarily have to go into specific gender studies or race studies or those kind of things to try to elaborate.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this stuff, I think, Jeff, should, like, especially the whole sexual stuff, it should all be taught, I think, at the home, or there should be permission slips or whatever. It should not just be the teachers get to come in and talk about, like you had that one MSNBC, he was a teacher, goes, I can't tell, no, you can tell your kids, you can tell what you did with your partner,
So yeah, I mean, that point, yeah, I don't think teaching about like gender studies, like what it means to be gay, is necessarily appropriate. But saying that we should accept people for their views, and it's that we may not agree with them, but if somebody has a view or wants to express themselves, people have a right to do so. If you teach those kind of concepts, then I think the rest kind of works itself out. I think the problem is really the discrimination part, where people feel like they are oppressed or put down or discriminated because of their views. And so if we teach respect, if we teach people to again allow people to express their viewpoint, and not necessarily, I mean, even if we don't agree with it, allow them to express it, I think that really should cover it, in my opinion. I mean, if people need to have special people that are having gender identity issues, I'm not saying that doesn't exist. Those people certainly need to be counseled and helped through that struggle. I don't necessarily think it's appropriate for a school curriculum to discuss that.
Yeah, and all these gender identity crisis and all this stuff they talk about, they call me an old fuddy-duddy, but let me tell you, I don't recall ever people having these issues when we were in high school. I think what happened, and this kind of, and I go back, it's all kind of all started with eliminating don't ask, don't tell. All they wanted, they said, and that was just, that's what they wanted first. Then they went after gay marriage. Then they went after a bunch of other stuff. And it's like, it's like people are not disliking their habits. They're disliking how they're getting in everyone's face. People who have faith, people who don't share their lifestyle, share their values. They're getting in their faces, with this sort of stuff. It's like, it's got to be, like this whole stuff with everything from CRT. I mean, we have pretty much, as a country, we are a colorblind society, and it's like these guys are amping up the one or two isolated incidents that happen. Why are you giving oxygen to these people, frankly, is what I'd like to know. Stop, they're not racists. They're not lurking around every corner, hiding behind every bush, waiting to lynch somebody. That's just not true. But if you listen to what the left has to say, that's what they believe. They think there's a racist, and then behind every bush there's some hate monger, ready to, just go commit hate crimes for the sake of committing hate crimes, and it's ridiculous. People need to take a step back. First of all, Ron DeSantis' law is not a don't say gay bill. It is It is similar to how in Maryland the Democrats they all passed question 6 it was back in the 80s. I want to say maybe 84, 86, somewhere around in that time frame where they did the basically they set it up that abortion would be legal for the foreseeable future in the state of Maryland. And nobody said, "Hey, that's a baby killing bill." Nobody attacked them for nobody came out and said that. Granted, the 80s were a different time, and but still, nobody did that. But if let's say if when we put up on the when Neil Parrott put on a referendum on he did 4 or 5 of them. I'm trying to think of a good one. When he did the one about he did one for slots. I have no problems with people gambling, but I have a problem with taxpayers funding these casino moguls and so on. But no, everyone was attacked. Oh, you're against children because we're going to take the slot money and use it for the kids. Yeah. So they were, when Governor Ehrlich proposed the exact same thing, they basically mocked him and said slots for tots. Now they're doing pot for tots. The Democrats. And it is really it's really bad. There's just a lack of civility on the American left.
Well,
There
I mean,
is.
you make this has been another thing that has bothered me for a long time, and you've kind of hit this nail on the head in a lot of ways, Dwight, which is just that you cannot. It's virtually impossible, for conservatives / Republicans to actually take a stand and be against something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the DeSantis thing, I mean, this wasn't, that's the left has named it "Don't Say Gay." The bill is really a parental rights, bill, right? I mean, it's the name of it. And so, the left turns the language around. And the same thing is that if you want to protect heterosexual rights, well, then you're anti-gay automatically. All of these things, every time you do this. So, what the left has learned and what they have been teaching, everybody on their side and trying to inculcate even the young people is that, look, go ahead and declare yourself as one of these people, LGBTQIA, whatever, do this, because then you become the special class, you get special treatment. As soon as somebody attacks you, now we can turn them into the villain. And then, we can highlight you. I mean, Leah Thomas, the swimmer. I mean, she has distinct advantages of being born a man and having a lot of these things, that just the traits that will never really, really go away. She was an average swimmer as a male, and she became a really good swimmer, or champion swimmer as a female. Women, the other competitors complained, but the media doesn't really want to hear that. The same thing happens with high school sports and things like that. Girls who've been cheated out of championships. They had won in the past because now a guy comes into their territory. But I mean, you criticize that person, you are now a hater. You become the villain. You're not standing up for Title IX and all these things in women's sports. All of a sudden, you're the bad guy. It's really a shame as to what's happened here.
Yeah, and what happened to it's just I mean, everything's kind of gone really, really screwy. I mean, the last 4 years, the last 2 years, I should say, or almost a year basically. It's like everything's been on steroids. They used the COVID lockdowns. All of this craziness. They use that to grab more and more power, more and more freedoms from the average Americans. Anybody that was against masks were anti-science. Anybody who's against the lockdowns were anti-science. What about the other sciences? That we have right now after about almost 3 years of being in a lockdown, where the scientists say the masks really didn't do a thing. The lockdowns did not do anything. I understand in the beginning when we didn't know anything, we needed to kind of do radical things. But once we started the science story, you got Fauci going around right now. He's talking about, we might have to bring the mask mandate back for Corona, the return of the COVID or whatever they want to call it. Frankly, they basically are out of step with mainstream, and that's why I think this year's election they are going to get slapped down so hard. I mean, look at Kenosha, Wisconsin. elected the first Republican ever in Kenosha. And
Yeah, I mean, and that was definitely a big deal for them electing that person because, but it just showed, voters there, were just tired of the lack of anything good happening in Kenosha. I mean, things had gone downhill, and they were tired about the lack of the law enforcement support and everything like this, and how things were just spiraling downward. Hopefully this new executive can help and turn some things around. But I mean, there was that story too about the Republicans are registering more former Democrats in Pennsylvania than the Democrats are registering Republicans. That's it's worrisome for the Democrats there. I don't know how this is going to turn out. I mean, I think the House, it's a pretty safe bet that it will flip, but the Republicans have the big advantage that that everybody thought they had going into the census situation, all the redistricting and all the redrawing of the maps didn't turn out to be as big an advantage as they thought it was going to be, because the Democrats, they went to court and they got a lot of the courts to overturn Republican maps and put in more democratically favored maps, so they blunted the Republicans' natural advantage on that. But I think it still flips. The Senate is still kind of one of those things that
I think
I think there's still going to be some close races, and we lost some, and we're losing some incumbents that are retiring. So,
but I think we'll be able to flip Nevada with lax salt, and I think we'll be able to flip New Hampshire from D to R. Those are the two flips I have. Which
I'm concerned about Georgia, because I'm just not really keen that Herschel Walker, that they've got the right thing going on there. This is the conundrum for the Republicans, right? Is how much influence do you let Trump have on this election? In some places it's good, it'll work to their advantage. In other places, it's like the albatross around your neck.
Remember 2010, there were a lot of seats we should have won. Like Harry Reid stuck it out because I think we had some flaky person running there. We pushed Linda McMahon, who didn't win.
But the whole Sharon Angle, Christine O'Donnell. I mean, this is another problem for the Republicans, is that the Democrats don't fall into this trap as much, but the Republicans tend to get carried away, and they're like, the whole Tea Party thing, we're going to get these candidates, they all these fresh faces go out there. It's like, did anybody bother to vet these people to see if they're actually sane?
I mean, look at Maryland Republicans. They're all gaga for Dan Cox, who basically was the lone vote against the condemnation of Ukraine today.
Did you guys hear that Sarah Palin is running for Senate?
Yes, Sarah Palin. Is she running for Senate or House?
House.
Is it? I thought it was Senate.
Yeah. It's Representative Don Young died in office, so
okay.
She's going to be one of several candidates. There's no guarantee that she's even she's going to make it, because a lot of people have jumped into that race. That in and of itself is going to be interesting, because exactly what is Sarah Palin's visibility. I mean, what's her reputation like now? I mean, is her popularity anywhere close to what it used to be? I don't think so. But maybe being out of it a little bit is a better thing, because I think she kind of went off the cuckoo rails for a while. Mm-hmm. So by lying low, maybe she can resurrect herself into, change herself into somebody, to a better candidate. Who knows?
Well, I saw something really funny, Don, the other day when she announced somebody made up a sign, Trump Palin 2024.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking, like, that's not gonna happen. Alaska brings nothing to the table.
I will say this: there's a guy that I've known for years and years and years, and I think he lives up in New York, and he's a good conservative guy, and he's written for he freelanced some little things for AIM once in a while in the past, mm-hmm. But he sent out an email to a bunch of people that he thought were his allies and friends from years ago, and he basically was inviting them to I think it was a new Facebook page for Trump 2024, Trump something.
Yeah.
And there are a few people there that responded immediately like, F no, like,
yeah.
Also, please BCC this list instead of putting everybody out in the open on top of that. but he's slightly miscalculated because like, that's fine. Go ahead and do that, but I'm not joining that group. I'm sorry, I'm not liking that page. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to go and tell him F you either.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing. It's like, I think Ron DeSantis would be a great president for us. I think he'd do a great job. Mike Pence would be we've got wonderful candidates, out there. Mike Pence,
Pence is probably a little bit too conservative for most people.
Well, I mean, even though Dan Cox,
he's not a bad person, and I do appreciate. He's very. Go ahead.
Jeff, I think part of Pence's problem. I mean, I like Mike Pence over. I've liked Mike Pence for a long time. It's just that the Trump people still think he's partly responsible because he wouldn't overturn the election.
I mean, we have a candidate in Maryland.
And they have to get away from that. They have just got to get totally away from that. That is just cuckoo stuff.
I mean, it's like you got Dan Cox calling Vice President Pence a traitor. I mean,
no.
It's like
but DeSantis, if he wins big, and he should, I mean, his opponent, he doesn't, this is not going to be a tight race by any stretch of imagination, right, Dwight, in Florida.
Yeah.
So if he comes off there with a pretty strong win, then he's got the wind at his back for 2024.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He positions himself, and he's standing up there. I mean, signing the parental rights thing for an education. Sets him up very well with a lot of hardcore conservatives.
Yeah.
And does keep Trump somewhat at bay.
Yeah. And here's something else that a lot of people don't seem to understand. There's a lot of, our kind of conservatives, the Paul Weyrich, Morton Blackwell conservatives. Okay. After Trump selected Vice President Pence, a lot of people who were sitting on the fence said, okay, he's okay because he selected Mike Pence. To be his running mate. And that's one thing I think that's lost upon the Trump people is that Mike Pence has his own following, frankly.
Yeah, and, I mean, he's look, I mean, he was he's been a radio talk show host, been a congressman, been the governor, he's got a really
very successful governor,
And he's been very consistent on the conservative issues, right? He's very pro-life. He's been very consistent that way. So, he doesn't, you can't poke holes through him for waffling and switching positions because that's not who Mike Pence is. Is he extremely conservative? Is he too conservative? That's a possibility. No. That's what kind of made him the perfect VP.
Yeah, I think he's when I say conservative, I don't feel like
Trump was.
Yes, I mean, again, when I say conservative, I don't mean necessarily like religiously conservative, but the fact that he is very much, he tempers his actions, and like the whole thing about not, joining in, the ridiculousness of, the trying to overthrow the election. I mean, again, I think that was a reasonable conservative kind of approach, but he got lambasted for that. So I mean, I don't think that he's necessarily a bad. I just want to say he's not a bad person. I really respect him. I think he's a great person. I think he's a great, representative of the Republican Party. I don't think that he is the right person to galvanize and really lead the Republican Party because of I think we need someone, and I mean it's kind of been said before, like Ronald Reagan, who's kind of more outspoken, more not necessarily like less refined, but just someone who has more like charisma, perhaps, and that's hard to define.
Jeff, charisma is a big part of the whole thing. I mean, that describes Reagan. Reagan had this charm that is a very rare quality, and that's why we have Reagan Democrats, right? I mean, you have that he could reach across. He got a lot of people to support the positions. His ability to talk to everybody was amazing. I love, Mike Pence is a great guy. I mean, and the conservative part, the way you describe it too. Yeah, look, Pence did exactly what he's supposed to do as the vice president. He has a certain duty, and he is limited into what he can do. I mean, he's basically there to oversee this thing. He's not there to change the election results, right?
Yep.
And these Republicans, these right wingers that are trying to blame him for not standing up and helping Trump on this, they're just out of line. They're just nuts. And here we are, almost 2 years. We're in a few months will be 2 years to the point of election, and they're still talking about it. This also drives me crazy, guys, because this is the same problem that we had, a little bit with Al Gore and Lieberman. There was some, there was some sore loser kind of issues back then.
Yep.
Hillary Clinton. It's like, do not be like them.
Yes,
Okay?
exactly.
The results are certified. They're in. You're not going to change the results. Get over it and let's go on and let it go back. Go back and win other elections, and then you get back in control. This last election, a lot of things that Trump did wrong, particularly by also perpetuating this huge thing about voter fraud. I mean, I think he really hurt the vote in Georgia. I think he really did cost Georgia Republicans the Senate as a result of that. And you can, there are issues with our voting system around the country. There have always been those issues, but you cannot, you can't do what Trump did and all this stuff, which was really kind of murky to me in terms of, how legal some of the stuff they were doing in trying to analyze all this stuff to begin with. They're like, fix the problems as best you can and move on. There is no perfect system. We've tried so many times to try to do better, but it's still a better system than virtually anywhere in the world in terms of voting. So let's do this and quit trying to blow the whole thing up here and cause problems. So we've got a lot of ways. We have to really move past a lot of the Trump issues that were problems. He did a lot of good things, but there were some. He left part of his legacy was some of these other things that have hurt the party and have kind of thrown them into this conundrum as like, which way do we go here? Do we want his endorsement? Do we not want his endorsement? Dwight, you were talking, earlier about, one of our friends just kind of pushing hard on this whole, Russia's better than Ukraine kind of situation, right?
Yeah.
Congressmen. We have like 6 congressmen out there that keep voting against, giving Ukraine really any more aid, things like this. It's like, what is wrong with you people?
Yeah.
So I do have a question though, since you brought it up a little bit, Don. Do you guys cover last time? Well, I guess it's kind of new, but the whole resolution in Congress about kind of the whole NATO reaffirming NATO's purpose and how that went down. Is that something you guys talked about at all?
No, we didn't talk about that. Yeah, we did not talk about that, so we can talk about it now.
That's interesting because again, I mean, I think in general, it seemed kind of weirdly split. So it seems like all the Democrats supported it, and 2/3 of the Republicans supported it, but there was like a definite, a third of the Republicans who really were basically, hardlined against it. And I think it was more on principle. But I was just curious what you guys thought about that because, again, it seemed on its face at least pretty innocuous, just reaffirming, the role and duty of NATO as a preserver of freedom and democracy. And I thought that was a pretty benign statement, but I don't know. It wasn't accepted by everyone. So,
I mean, my view is this: NATO was set up to fight the communists, the Russians, the Soviets, whatever you want to call them, and it was and they've been successful. They've prevented, the Soviet invasion of Western Europe. Excuse me. If NATO was not there, that definitely would have happened. We saw them try and take over Berlin. When they tried to block off Berlin, we had to do the Berlin airlift, to supply Berlin for a while. And it's one of those things. It's like, imagine if Joe Biden were running the Berlin airlift. Just think how bad it would have gone.
And Jeff, and I generally agree with you. I mean, I think that the statement itself is relatively benign. I just think that maybe there are some Republicans that are saying like, okay, look, one of the issues is that Ukraine is not a NATO country, right? They're
of course,
not a member of NATO, so that and there's no doubt that that the idea of this resolution really is to kind of give kind of tacit backing to Ukraine. Not being a NATO member, but kind of almost as if they're trying to push NATO a little bit, maybe to do a little bit more, to get a little more involved, to do something. And there's some Republicans that are just not comfortable with that right now. Others who may not want to upset the apple cart, that maybe still somewhat they're concerned about just the overall economic situation. There was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal about we've imposed all these sanctions, and the oligarchs are getting squeezed and all these things, but not everything is happening quite the way that on paper that maybe people thought it would be, because some of these oligarchs have got these interests in the U.S. that are extremely intertwined with so much stuff that to sanction them could have bigger reverberations that our government doesn't want to see that had a domino effect and affect other countries where the target was Russia, but all of a sudden you've got another 7 or 8 countries that are going to be affected by this if they do this. So it's a little bit, the whole thing is very tricky. I'm
Well, that's the
glad
problem with if we ever decide to sanction China, I mean, there's so much intertwined politics and economy there that it's just like, we've already seen, for good or ill, when Trump tried to push the steel tariff, that really bit us both ways. So I mean, you could say that it was a good thing or a bad thing, but it definitely it hurt as much as it helped. And those kind of things you got to be really careful about, because we don't have the economic independence that I think we should as a country. So it's a dangerous role you play. It's almost like again, I kind of make an analogy to the cold arms race in Russia. We have this kind of economic arms race with China, where we are really trying to understand our relationship with them, but it's much more complex because we didn't really have a relationship with Russia during the Cold War, other than just the fact that we had some geographical concerns. We didn't really have socioeconomic concerns. We didn't really do trading with Russia. We didn't import gas from them, as we're aware of, or other types of commodities from them. But anyway, that's another topic for this time. It's interesting that nowadays you can't really sanction anyone without it biting you as well. I mean, if we were to sanction any of the Middle Eastern countries, they have the ability to restrict oil for us, and we've been seeing the cost of Russia reducing their oil exporting to us. I mean, these things do affect us, so we can't just assume that anything we do is going to be a one-sided.
The tax holiday is almost over, so enjoy the $4 gas.
I mean, kind of to your point a little bit, Jeff, too. It's just that, I mean, this is a result of kind of this big push towards globalism, right? In a lot of ways, is that we have now become this. The world is very intertwined. The countries are very intertwined. They're doing so much business economically with each other that you can't. It's very hard to separate everybody out. That sanctions on one country will not be sanctions on just one country in most cases. It will affect more than one country as a result of this. So the big push for kind of this global economy has put us into this thing where we can't.
It's kind of an economic version of MAD, mutual assured destruction.
Something interesting though.
So this would be Mars, mutually assured recessions for everyone.
So I don't know if you remember, at the beginning of the war here, one of the things that was happening is that when it was decided that we're going to be these sanctions and this whole deal with oil, is that a lot of the oil companies said, okay, well, we're going to pull out, and like BP and Shell, they're going to, they had a lot of interest there. They're going to write down the value of their interests in Russia, which are going to be several $1 billion. Well, the Journal reported today or yesterday that one of the things is that because the price of oil has gone so high, that when a lot of these companies, when they write off these assets, it's really not going to make much of a dent in their balance sheet, because the oil prices have been offsetting the losses they're going to take by writing off their interest in Rosneft and all these other things that have been going on. So kind of, just you never know. I mean, they're not really going to get hit as much as people thought they were going to get hit.
Yeah.
But that's the companies. I mean, the consumers obviously get hit, and as a company, you can write off any kind of bad investment and get a tax benefit for it. So it's really hard nowadays for companies to fail, because for every profit you can realize, you can also realize some sort of offset for that too. I mean, there are ways to play the books so that your company always succeeds, even if your customers don't.
And you got to love the Democrats, because the Democrats are now railing against the oil companies. I mean, they first went after them for they wanted to have that excess profits tax kind of a thing like they did before. But they're saying you have to drill more. You got to, we need to produce more. But it wasn't that long ago they had told those same oil executives, you can't do fracking, you can't do this. We have to get ourselves off of fossil fuels.
Did you guys see it in Maryland? There was a bill. I haven't checked on it recently, but I saw in the Maryland legislature they were trying to pass. Mostly Democrats were trying to pass a bill, basically saying that Maryland has a right to go after billion-dollar companies that cause global warming. And it was really poorly written bill. And I was like, who even drafted this? Because I couldn't see the sponsor for it. But it was just everything you think would be wrong with the bill.
Montgomery County Democrat.
Yeah, it was just an awful thing. It's like, basically saying that, Maryland is affected by, global warming, and we have the right as, Marylanders to sue any, business that is, $1 billion business because they're impacted on global warming. And it's just like, that was it. It wasn't like anything was defined as far as, a specific contribution to it or anything. It's just like, if you had nexus in the state and you're a big company, we're going to sue you for, the fact that you caused global warming. So it just was.
Well, I mean, look, the Biden administration through the SEC is already promulgating a rule to corporations, publicly held corporations, that they need to now report, in their shareholder documents, the effect of what their carbon footprint is for what they produce. And maybe part of this is here. Maybe part of this is that whole thing. That's like this what you just mentioned here with going after these companies that have caused global warming. It's like, oh look what their carbon footprint is. We need to sue them because kind of like the tobacco companies, they're causing global warming, so that's damaging us. So now we need to sue them so that we can mitigate this. And use, and collect a lot of bucks from them, for which they will go and waste.
That is kind of a typical Democrat thing. So, like, you've heard, I'm sure, that Biden is proposing, a tax on the billionaire tax. So basically, people that have more than $100 million in unrealized assets get 20% of that taxed. And I'm not sure if that's like per year or what, but I mean, so I'm not against like a flat 20% tax on like income, but if you have unrealized assets like investments that are worth a certain amount of money, and you get taxed 20% on that, that seems, again, I'm not saying that billionaires shouldn't pay their fair share of tax, but if, again, the whole point of unrealized gains is the fact that they're investments. There are things that, you eventually cash out on, but until then, it's just an investment. It may go up, may go down, but to get taxed on that, like 20%, and again, I don't know if that's per year or what, it's just, that seems a bit much.
Yeah, and it wasn't clear that whether or not this was like net unrealized gains. I mean, would you take out your unrealized losses?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's unrealized, so there is no profit or loss. It's unrealized.
Right. So you're right. I mean, so the thing is that if they say it's unrealized gains, the profit, and then the next year you go in, you wind up the market goes bad and you're actually in the hole a little bit. You get a tax refund. It doesn't seem that they haven't thought this out at all. It's really confusing.
Yeah, and it's, let me tell you, billionaires are not going to get, what we need to do is grow the economy, build the tax base, not increase the tax. If we cut taxes, it would actually be a better stimulus for the economy than taxing folks. We've never been able to tax ourselves into prosperity.
Well, yeah, I mean, I really thought the best thing for taxes, and again, I don't want to do all about taxes, but was like the plan to say, okay, let's do away with like all the complicated IRS laws. Let's just tax, have a use tax. And so when you buy something, you pay a tax on it, a one-time tax. So if you like buy a car, the first time you buy it, you're taxed on that. But if you sell the car again, it's already been taxed. You don't need to tax it again. When you get, when you earn money, you have income tax. That shouldn't be taxed again if you give that money to someone else because it's already been taxed. I think that one of the issues I have with taxing is that the IRS and states and everyone want to tax every level of like transaction. Like, you get taxed when you earn money, you get taxed when you spend money, you get taxed when you save money. It's like,
and when you stay up, and then they tax the interest on the money that you saved.
Right. We can't. Yeah, we can't get away from that. I mean, but the part of that thing about the taxes too, Dwight, is just on the income taxes. I've been railing for the last month plus, ever since the idea of this gas tax holiday was first proposed in Maryland, and it's in effect, and we're down to the last like 8 or 9 days or whatever. It's just that this is, to me, that's a drop in the bucket. Do something meaningful. Cut our, do something, give us an income tax cut, give us a property tax cut, that also affects the people who live in Maryland. You cut the gas tax, Virginians, people from Delaware, they can come in and buy your gas cheap and just not pay the tax, right?
It's not even that much cheaper. I said I'm in Michigan right now, and it's the gas prices here are just the same as they are in Maryland. So I don't know if the gas companies in Maryland are like, well, we can like offset the savings and charge a little bit more, or what? But it's not really.
They're not giving us all. They're not giving us.
And that's part of the problem. Is just that, I watch the prices in my neighborhood because I've got several stations right out here within a mile and a half to see what they did when the tax was suspended. And the Liberty gas stations, was independent, they immediately dropped their price 36 cents, and the gas tax is 36.2. The other stations didn't do anything pretty much for days. They didn't do anything, and the consumer is not really sure exactly what the heck is going on. When you do something like the gas tax, which where the independent operators control the prices, and you've got a lot of different factors, it can affect people in different ways. Some operators would cover and basically say, I'll cut the price 30 cents and bag the extra 6 cents, and I'm not going to have to pay the state 36 cents. Who's going to come after them? The state is not going to be able to police this.
No, they're not.
Right.
But if you're giving them, if you give somebody a property tax, cut, if you give somebody an income tax cut, that's a real cut, and it can be and that affects only the people who live in your state. On top of that,
imagine if your employer could decide how much of your
like a
taxes
90-day gas tax holiday in Virginia. But I can see Marylanders, all they're going to do is they're going to start, people who live very close to Tyson's Corner or whatever. Once Maryland's price goes back up, if Virginia enacts their tax, they'll go over to Virginia for 3 months and get their gas. So it's a silly election year politics thing. And every Republican in Maryland, and as much as we don't have a lot of Republicans in the Maryland legislature, as much as I love them in general, when they keep tooting their horn about this stupid gas tax holiday, I'm like, give us something meaningful. Stand up and don't give us this stuff that the Democrats widely supported because it's an election year. Okay.
It's an election year ploy, and heaven help us all if Kelly does not become governor of Maryland. We're all going to be in trouble then. Because let me tell you, the first thing they're going to do is
I don't know. I have no clue how this governor's race is going to turn out. I mean, I'm not hearing anything from the Democrat side at this point, really. They seem to be, they're still, I guess, fighting amongst each other, which I guess is good for Kelly at this standpoint. But I don't see the same enthusiasm this year, and effort this year as we had with Hogan in 14 and even in 18. So I don't. This is where my fear is that the registration, just the fact that the Democrats have got such a wide advantage on us, that favors them. I don't know if Kelly is going to make enough inroads onto the Democrats to convince them, or whether or not the Democrats will be apathetic enough that they're just going to stay away.
Yeah, and here's the thing: we've got a few things that it's really bad for consumers. But if we're going to be paying around $6 for gas, and there's no way a Democrat wins the governor's mansion in Maryland, frankly.
I mean, I think inflation, gas, pocketbook issues
that will
affect
help
all Democrats. That's going to affect every single Democrat, around. It doesn't matter where because this problem is everywhere.
And I've got that morphing software, so we morph every Democrat into Joe Biden, like we did in '94. Where every Democrat was morphed into Bill Clinton. And that's pretty much what we could do, like especially if it's Tom Perez. He's basically, this guy comes out of the AOC's wheelhouse, so to speak. They all think alike, This is a guy who resents people. I mean, this guy, he's like a mean and nasty.
There was a former Clinton pollster that came out and said, the reason for Biden's low poll numbers is that it's gone from the friendly, likable Joe to the meaner, sterner, angrier Joe. No, it's just that we have an incompetent president. That's the problem. Yes. Mm-hmm. There's no change in Joe's demeanor, President Biden's demeanor necessarily. It's just they just can't get there. They can't figure anything out.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when they have to go. They dust off Barack Obama and bring him.
That was great. That's classic, don't you think? I mean, Barack Obama is more popular than Joe Biden at this point. I mean, everybody wants to be with Barack. Take my picture. Let's do this. Nobody wants to talk to Joe.
Well, you saw Joe at one point turned around and was like facing the corner or something.
Yeah, there was nobody there. What an embarrassment.
Maybe it was one of his invisible friends.
We got about 4 minutes to go, Dwight.
Oh, final thoughts. I guess let's start with Jeff in case his connection drops out again. So, final thoughts, Jeff.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, my as always, my thoughts and prayers are with Ukrainians, and I definitely want to help them in any way we can. I think we talked about this in previous episodes, and I apologize that I've been missing on a few of the Friday night episodes, but I think that there are ways we can help Ukrainians, both in terms of the Red Cross. There are humanitarian efforts we can do for them. As far as the sanctions, those kind of things, we've talked about those. Those are always kind of two-edged. But as far as the actual the people of Ukraine, obviously, that their issues will exist past the conflict. So I'm really hopeful that both now and in the future we will maintain our ability to help them. And of course, I'm not saying that Ukraine as a country is perfect, because obviously they have their own issues. There are hackers in Ukraine. There are bad elements within the Ukrainian government. But that being said, this is still I think we should as Americans have an outpouring for them as much as we can to help them in their situation. And again, I think the whole invasion was ill-advised. I think that this is going to have repercussions a long time for all of our policy, and I'm just hopeful that our presidency is strong enough to send a message that any kind of foreign aggression will not be tolerated. Because again, one of my concerns is that this may set a roadmap for China to invade or look at Taiwan as a potential target acquisition, and help them kind of posture themselves in a way that they may want to take over their resources. So I'm hoping that doesn't play out, but that's kind of my concern, is that may occur. So I'm hopeful that we can establish ourselves as being a stabilizing force, someone who can help the situation from deterring further, and also stand up and say, yes, we do not accept this, that there will be not just repercussions from us, but from the global front, that NATO, the UN, which already has basically sanctioned Russia, these things will have some weight and have effects. So again, that's kind of my concern. So that's kind of my final thoughts.
Don, final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, good comments, Jeff. I mean, that like you said, I mean, we know Ukraine isn't perfect by such imagination, but you see the atrocities being committed upon that country by Russia when you're killing innocent civilians and bombing the heck out of the country. This is going to be a long recovery whenever this ends. Unfortunately, we see a lot of military experts now saying this could be years. The resistance is strong in Ukraine, so we much stronger than Putin had imagined. So ill-advised, definitely ill-advised, and we're on day 44. I don't think Putin planned this thing for more than about 2 or 3 days. So it's not working out real well for Putin at this point in time. But
it's kind of how, it's kind of how General McClellan predicted the Civil War would be over in a few days.
I don't know. I mean, it's like Russia is like, are you having any deja vu about Afghanistan by any chance? I mean, just like, did you learn nothing by this? Unbelievable. But my couple final thoughts, I guess. One is I think it's absolutely brilliant for what Governor Abbott in Texas is threatening to do, basically, with the Title 42 restrictions being lifted by the Biden administration on illegal immigrants in terms of where they're going to be before they get processed. He wants to put them on a charter bus and send the charter buses to D.C. I love the idea on the surface of it. I don't know if it's how practical it is or anything like that, but I mean, that definitely sends a message. And I kept thinking in the back of my mind, I mean, if we only had more, governors, particularly on the border states, that were like that, said, oh, okay, so you're basically saying, open up the floodgates on my border, to let more, illegals in, but you're really not going to do anything about it in the end. They're going to wind up being able to get spread across the country. Why don't we just send them to where you are and let you deal with them? Send them to Delaware. I mean, Senator Joe Biden's home state. See how Delaware reacts to that. Something like
That's
that.
That's what Governor DeSantis is doing, sending them to Delaware.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. I mean, why not do something like that? I mean, for heaven's sakes. One of my other pet peeves here too is this yet another extension of the student loans by the Biden administration. Now we're going to go to August. For anybody out there who ever taken out a loan and has repaid a loan and is still repaying a loan, and you're doing what you had obligated to do, the Biden administration, with being pressured by the left. I mean, they want. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, they want to cancel this debt as if it for people who paid off their loans, particularly. I mean, I don't blame them if they're going to be a little bit sore. Like, hey, I did my thing. I struggled. I paid my debts, my obligations, and now you're just saying you're going to cancel this or whatever. And the government, of course, being in control by the Democrats, they're not talking about the cost of what this is costing the taxpayers, or will cost the taxpayers already from the suspension that they've had, the pause. And if they actually do start canceling, debt and things like that, it's like, hey, that's on the backs of my kids and my grandkids at this point in time. This is only adds to the ticking time bomb that I think we already have on our hands anyway. It's not good policy at all. You can argue maybe the student loan program needs to be reformed, and there's no doubt that there's a racket going on between higher education, on that kind of thing anyway. But
Hey, Don, let me just say to your point about the student loan. I do think that student loans should be dischargeable through bankruptcy if they really are causing a burden. If somebody really has made unwise choices and they basically have no way of repaying it, I think that in extraordinary cases those should be dischargeable, because right now they aren't. But having a carte blanche forgiveness for a whole generation, I think, is a little bit a bridge too far. But I think that there should be there should be compassion for people who actually have tried to do what they can, but they studied for a career in something that just didn't pan out, or that they just weren't able to to meet, because again, the cost of education has also been skyrocketing too. So I get that. It's just again, it's one of the things you got to be careful about how you invoke policy, because that can drastically affect future policies as well.
Yeah, look, and I'm even willing to say, the whole program that was started where if you're doing, X amount of years of public service, you can get some of that discharge over time. I got a friend of mine. I mean, I know that they're working for the government as a lawyer, not going to make as much money there as they could probably in private practice. But they, if he stays there for a few more years, I think all his student debt goes away or whatever. Yeah. I'm okay with that. Okay.
Yeah, it's like our friend. Yeah, it's like our friend John. He went to med school at UCES. He had to work in the VA system for a long time for pittance. Although now he's got his own practice, and I think he still does.
Right. I think once when you enroll in UCES, I think you have a 7-year commitment.
Yeah.
And then after that, you can leave the service and do whatever you want to do. Some stay, but a lot do leave. But boy, what do they get in return? They get a medical education that is completely paid for. And in the meantime, while they're serving, they don't get deployed that often.
Yeah.
But they actually, when they hit residency too, I mean, they start getting paid halfway decent money until they finally, reach their 7-year point, and then they can go in private practice. That's fine. I mean, the government gets something out of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, if they were to, let's say you're a student that graduated and, also, you graduated and you've got some student debts. Let's say you got $25,000 in student debts, saying you went to a state
20 year
school.
college.
20, yeah. Yeah, I know all too well. But
not if you went to BYU, though. My kids, we were able to get them done there a lot less.
Well,
but I paid for it in other ways through tithing.
But if you go to University of Maryland, let's say University of Maryland, you can still get an undergraduate use. You don't live on campus, and you get a little smart with buying books. You can still get. I mean, you can finish University of Maryland for about $25,000-$30,000 roughly. And is it a lot? That's a lot of money. But here's the thing: you got to go into majors that will give you a return on investment. Frankly, engineering is actually by the best major for return on investment. Because 4 years you start making money. You're doing well. But I think the big thing is, there should be no student loan forgiveness. Because it's just like amnesty spits in the face of all the people that came to America legally. You know what this does? It spits in the face of everyone that saved, scrimped, did pay as they go through school, and it spits in their face, frankly, saying that, oh, so what? You were a sucker for doing things the right way, and that's really what it is.
The thing is, it can be said like paying off credit cards, those kind of things. I mean, I get the fact that nobody wants to have someone be totally forgiven for all their debts, but I mean, we do have bankruptcy for a reason, because people, for whatever reasons, they get over their heads. And so we allow for forgiveness for like incurring too much credit card debt, which is, a consumerist kind of spending. We allow for, medical, debts where, you don't have proper insurance or something happens out of control. I'm saying that I think we should allow it for educational forgiveness, not like just, automatically, but that should be, as one of the things, one of the qualifying events that should be allowed, because eventually again, and I'm all for the better programs of like, going through a repayment. If you're a teacher, you get, your tuition paid for. If you're a lawyer and you do pro bono work or work as a DA or something like that, you get that paid off. Or if you're in the military, you get a government loan or government, payment for your tuition. That's a better program as far as I'm concerned. But in some cases, through no fault of their own, because a lot of times schools don't really teach, what career to go into. They really don't prepare, in my mind, a lot of students to enter the workplace. It's kind of left up to them. So again, I'm just saying that I know people through no fault of their own, tried to do what they could to enter the workplace, but because the economy shifted, or because jobs are hard one year and they don't work a different year, it's difficult for them to find a job, or they find a job which just doesn't pay very much. I mean, you've seen ads for jobs where it's like $15 an hour, but require a master's degree. Some ridiculous like that. It's just like those will never pay back for educational costs. So I'm just saying that in some cases, or even something like being my nieces, both of them want to be psychiatrists. You've got to be a master's in psychiatry before you can really enter a practice, but you don't get a whole lot of money being a psychiatrist. A psychologist, I should say. Psychiatrists actually get a little more money, but psychologists or being in like the profession is typically one of those underpaid fields. Like
and with those you usually end up going into either social work, something like that.
Right. Yeah. So again, so I'm saying that if you're doing it for the right reasons, you want to help out, but it still costs a lot. And you find out that have been paying off student loans for 10 years. It's not going down. The interest rate is such that it's going to be another 20 years before I get this paid off. Again, I don't want to be non-compassionate for those people in those situations that just can't pay off their student loans. I mean, I empathize with that. I'm just saying that again, I don't necessarily agree for giving everyone forgiveness, but if somebody is doing the best they can and they still aren't getting ahead, don't penalize them for the rest of their life because they went into a profession where it just doesn't pay a lot.
True.
And that's my only point.
Yeah.
My final comment, Dwight, is
yes.
because I sent you that picture. For some
Yes.
reason, I can still get a Shamrock Shake out here.
Yeah, I can't get them out here in the big city, unfortunately. But my final thought is a couple final thoughts. One, kudos to the Duckpin and Brian Griffiths. He's been doing some excellent work recently on various articles he's been doing. Brian, good job. One of our visiting doctors who's not here nearly as much as we'd like him to be here. And he's got some great articles. Go check out the Duckpin. He's got some great stuff right now. Two, I want to say there is, I think the problem I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, frankly, with a lot of with inflation, all that. I can see us being in a recession come November, in the fall, because I think, right now there's just only so much the economy can take. We've got the emerging invasion coming down the southern borders with Joe Biden getting rid of Title 24 or 28? I think it's 24. To let
42.
42. There you go. Where they let people just waltz into America, without having any papers, giving them nice iPhones, and putting them on buses to send them off to the interior, and Jim. Oh, well, you do want us to be able to get in touch with. Well, how about you give them an ankle bracelet? That might work a little bit better, because you can't turn off stuff on a cell phone, right? I mean, you can't have a cell phone jailbreak. That's just a myth. You can't get that done. It's like.
I mean, what is that? I mean, the government was like, what? They're going to give them a cell phone so they can track them or something?
Yes.
Like, come on.
I don't even buy that. It's like, how do they say that with a straight face as well? So shame on you guys in the over at DHS ICE. I mean, I know it's not you guys. It's the big guy, big man, who's making these calls, and we all know he's not playing with a full deck. I think
the iPhone and a TikTok account.
Yeah, I know. And then they could all start their own little YouTube channel, so they could all start making the big coins on YouTube and so on. And we've got also one of our friends is running for U.S. Senate, Chris Chafee. Everyone go out, encourage everyone to go out and support Chris Chafee. He's a great guy, great American. Probably one of the best candidates we have running for U.S. Senate in Maryland right now. So go support Chris and his campaign. And you can always check out my website, dwightformoco.com. I got a whole bunch of new endorsements, a new endorsement that will be coming out Monday. Sign up for my newsletter, sign up for on the Facebook page, and my other social sites. Just smash the like button, follow me on Twitter, and a lot of interesting stuff coming down the pike, We just had a really great event last night. We probably made about $1,000 last night, Don, at that event. And so we're doing well, so everyone, good night. We'll see everyone next week. And basically everyone, we're rolling into Holy Week, I think, next week, right? Yeah. Or the week after, I should say. And we got to pay our taxes, unfortunately.
Yeah. Believe me.
On that cheery note,